Hey guys, today I am working on a video game music demo for a 2D game. It's about a lonely Viking, and he's in his hometown, and as soon as he leaves his house, he notices that there's no one else there. So he's pretty lonely, and so for this demo, I wanted to definitely take the 2D aesthetic, very colorful, very vibrant, but also a little bit sad. And so it's kind of a melancholy mixture of happy and sad. And so I wanted to use a lot of major 7 chords, a lot of 9 chords, things that harmonically really kind of pull at the heartstrings, but also give it a really cool 16-bit orchestral mixed with electronic vibe. So the way that I built this track is I started off with a pad. Now for this track, the developer specifically wanted something that sounded kind of like Fez. Something that kind of has some ambient textures about it, calm, not too fast, not too slow. The first thing I did was I picked a very slow tempo. So I actually picked 58 as my 8th note, or you could call that 106 for your quarter note. And so basically it's just a 4 count. And I chose a pad by Massive. If I go in here real quick, kind of check that out. It's one of the presets called Dance on Glass, but I took it and I made sure that in my envelope the attack was pretty late, and that way it creates this really cool polyphonic texture. They're in fifths. Cool. And then I wanted to play with that texture and make that last for an entire minute. So kind of went through and just chose some chords that I liked, and I even made some markers here at the top. You'll notice C major 7, E minor 7, F9, A minor 7. Just kind of went through and picked a chord palette that made sense to me. And a quick little note here that towards the end I chose a subdominant, which is the F chord in a C major scale. And then I went down to a 3 chord, which is the E minor 7, went down one more step to a 5 of a 5, which is a D chord, which leads back to the 5 chord, which is a G, which after the end of the loop goes back to a C. So the harmonic chord progression was very intentional so that each of the chords would loop back to the beginning very seamlessly. And that was the whole intentionality there, because once I knew I had a structure, then I could build whatever melody I wanted on top of it, whatever little extra effects I wanted to put on top. So that was the core structure. And then I decided, okay, if we're going to start mixing this thing properly, then that really needs an EQ on the pad there. And so I took that, my favorite EQ, which is FabFilter Pro Q, and I put a high pass and a low pass on there so that it would only take up the mid range there. And then I decided to add some little synth blasts. So also with Massive, and I believe that almost this entire thing, this entire track is Massive or Absinthe by Native Instruments. So I just took a synth brass and I put a ton of delay on it. Specifically in this track, it is a quarter note delay over here, just set to 50% left. So that way, when I play just that, it should be a quarter note bum, 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 and it fades out each time. Creates a really cool effect, I think. And that way, for the entire thing, it kind of creates this melancholy feel. Even with just those 2 instruments, you could almost have an entire track like this. That kind of creates this really sad texture. Now I can start adding some things on top. So since they are both mixed to be right in the mid-range of the frequency spectrum, I also decided, okay, I need something kind of twinkly on top. And so I took a piano sample, and for this one, I decided to add some reverb and some delay. And then very similar, I took my high pass and low pass filter and I pushed it up to the higher range between 500 and 5K. And that way, it really stands out. Kind of like that. And then I went through and finished that entire first half of the track called the A section, but I also added with a bass line, a synth bass, also with Massive. And I took that, and you can see how carved out this is. I took my high pass all the way down, and now it's just between about 30 and 200, very, very low and contained. And so that way this bass really sits underneath and it supports the chords. Just like that. And then I went through and just kind of created an A section. It's very melancholy, very, very cool like that. And then the second section, the B section, I really wanted to add some more energy. And so you'll notice I added a kick. And it matches the pulse of the bass. I wanted to give more energy. And that kick, whenever I do kicks, I always take the EQ on that, and just like the bass, I really put it right in the pocket down there in that same space. Shouldn't be taking up any other room, especially no headroom. And then I took a snare very similarly, and I put him in the high range, put those together, made a cool little beat, and added a delay on it. Pretty simple. Also added a hi-hat, EQ to the high range as well. And then last, to give it a bit more energy, I added what I'm calling a swoop. Basically, I just opened up a blank session of massive, went down here to my white noise, turned up the amplitude there, and that's it. And took the attack on my envelope here and I made it really long. So I actually just did it by ear to last exactly the length of 1/8 note. And that way I can go in here and just pop them in and copy them as necessary. So now you add those in and it creates a little bit of every time energy. Kind of sucks us into the next beat, the next big beat. And then from there I decided, okay, let's add one more texture to kind of fill in the space here. Let's pick something in the mid-range. And so I just took another massive patch and I really tweaked this thing so it really fit. And I added delay and reverb. And with the EQ of this one, I put it right there in the middle. This is the mid-range. And it's just a little arpeggio. Originally I put it in the piano, but it was too bright. And so I decided I need an actual synth for this. Sounds like this. And what's cool about this is in order for it to fit within this context, I don't want it to war and battle with the melody that I'm going to put in the high range. So the only way that this actually fits and feels organic and has energy and everything is if I take this Pro Q and I automate it. So watch what happens when I go through. You can kind of scan through and see that I'm constantly moving the high section over here. That way it kind of comes in and out. That way, as my melody comes and goes, I can ebb and flow, and that way it feels a bit more organic and it kind of grows with the energy. And then the last piece here is to take the melody. So I decided to create a little synth string out of a massive instrument. And then once I had this entire B section finished, I decided in order to make this super loopable, what I was going to do is just take my very first chord, which was this pad right here, just 2 notes, 2 chords, which is the same as what happens right here when I add the piano in. Just like that. Pretty cool. But in order to make this loopable, I took this little pad and I also copied it on the back end. So that way, when we get to this final G chord, it loops back. And it creates a nice clean loop that I can cut in half. That way, when it loops naturally, back to the beginning. It's the exact same material. All right, so now that you know how I created this track, let's listen to it with the loop. Enjoy.